family would take yearly vacations to a different hotel and resort every summer. It would always be me, my wife, and my 2 little boys. The summer of 2017 was the creepiest vacation of all because of the horrifying encounter with a creepy family at the hotel. When we arrived at the hotel, after unpacking, kids went to the water park, whereas my wife and I sat on the chairs around the pool. When the night was falling, I went to get the boys and get ready for dinner. After searching for some time, I was able to find Tom, the older of the 2. I asked him where David was. He told me that he saw David going to the other side of that park along with a strange person. I searched for him like an idiot and finally saw him. He was in the back corner of the park, where a few chairs were set up, talking to a small boy who looked about his age. Sitting in the chairs next to him was a strange couple. That seemed to be the boy's parents. I walked up and briefly introduced myself, but they didn't respond aside from giving me a slight smile. Then I held David with my hand and took him to the room. I was afraid about this situation. David told me something strange. He said that the strange couple had told me to come for dinner at their place. And from the way he was telling this, David seemed interested as well. We ignored this after that and went for dinner at a nearby place. When we got back, we got in the elevator and made our way up to our floor. But as the elevator doors opened, David's new friend and his mother were standing there as if they were waiting for the elevator to go down. As soon as we got out, the mother looked at me with a short smile and asked if David could join them for dinner tonight. I briefly looked at my wife, who seemed just as confused and concerned as I was, and then I looked back at the lady and denied it kindly. Her smile faded as she turned and walked down the opposite hallway. It was strange that they were creepily waiting for us by the elevator the whole time just to ask about dinner. When we got inside our room, we pulled David aside and strictly told him not to go near that family without one of us with him. He seemed a bit upset about it, but he agreed. Eventually, we all got ready for bed and turned out the lights. A few hours into the night, I was shaken awake. I jolted up, pretty on edge, and I saw Tom next to me, still shaking my arm. I asked him if he was okay, and Tom responded quietly, whispering to me that David was talking to someone at the door. I immediately jumped out of bed and turned the corner leading to the front door. From the short glimpse I got before yelling at him, I could tell he was in the process of figuring out how to unlock the door, and I could hear a faint voice on the other side. It was like creepy whispers followed my terrifying giggles. I sprinted towards him, screaming for him to back away from the door. David jumped back, frightened by the volume of my voice. I slammed against the door, hearing footsteps sprinting down the hall as I finished unlocking the door and swung it open. I know I should have just stayed in the room and called for help, but I was in such a rage that all I wanted was to confront that creep. As I stood outside the room, I saw someone peeking from behind the wall at the end of the hallway. I tried to catch up, but once I turned the corner, there was no one on the other side. After looking around for a few minutes, I ran back to our room and met my wife, who was already awake due to the chaos of the situation. I told her to lock the door as I was going to go to the front desk to inform them of the incident. By the time I got down to the lobby, my adrenaline was starting to fade out, and I was trying to calm myself down so I could explain what happened. There was a young woman at the counter that I talked to, and I could tell she had never dealt with a situation like this. She called a security guard over to talk to me, as well as her manager. As we discussed everything, I told them about the couple that was near my kid in the evening. But their response sent shivers down my spine. They told me that no other couple was staying at the hotel. And for that specific night, besides our kids, there were no kids on the floor as well. They had no security cameras in the hallway, but the entrance and exit camera didn't get any footage of that woman or couple or that kid coming near the elevator. I told them a description of that man and woman, but none of them knew anyone who fit that description. We left that hotel after that incident, and to this day, we don't know who they were and what did they intended to do that night with David. I've always been drawn to camping, especially during summers when everything looked so fresh and vibrant that it feels lovely to hang out with the nature. So last year, during the summer, my best friend Katie asked me to go camping with her for a couple of days. I didn't think much about it and I jumped at the chance. We planned a camping trip to the nearby forest. Then we packed our camping gear and set off to a remote spot in the woods. It was a usual spot where Katie's family had been camping for years. As we hiked in, I felt a strange stillness around me. Somehow I felt it in a good way, as it was oddly satisfying. It was like we were the only two people in the world. The hike was short, and upon reaching our chosen campsite, we promptly began setting up the camp and the fire. This took us about an hour, and we had some time after that as well, so we decided to go for a hike. As we were hiking, we came across a faded trail. Katie was unfamiliar of that faded track, so she was confused, but we thought of going towards it. So we followed the trail that wound through the woods that eventually led us to an old abandoned cabin. It had broken windows, and the roof was falling off. Katie was eager to explore it, and I was a bit hesitant but also curious. We stepped inside. It was clear that no one had been there for years. We explored the cabin for a while, looking for interesting stuff and trying to figure out who lived there. But there was nothing that could give us a hint of someone's existence there. We thought of leaving. I noticed something strange right when we were leaving. It was a door that I hadn't noticed before. The door looked strange and was locked with chains and a lock. I pointed it out to Katie, and we both became curious. The lock was very old and rusted. I knocked at the door just to make sure no one was there. Katie went out to grab a large rock and gave it to me. She then brought another one, and we both smashed the rocks against the lock. And after a few attempts, it broke open. The door was jammed and it dragged against the ground as we tried to open it. It was pitch black inside and we couldn't see anything. Katie took her flashlight out, and in the light, we discovered a staircase going down into the basement. We both were scared now, but we assured ourselves that nobody had been here for years and there was nothing to fear. I led the way down the steep staircase. With just a few steps, we got into the room, and what we saw there was very disturbing. There were several small mattresses on the ground, along with some other random furniture. They looked very modern, though, like the mattresses had to be within 5 years old. It was not that scary until we saw something far more sinister. It was blood, and it was all over the place as if people died there. Everything about it filled us with fear, and both of us rushed upstairs, pushed the door shut again, and stood there unsure of what we had just seen. It looked like a crime scene, and we thought of reporting it, but Katie insisted that we should leave. As we were talking and I got louder, Katie heard something and put her finger on her lips, signaling me to be quiet. As we stopped talking, I heard footsteps from a distance coming towards the cabin. And after some time, they were just outside the cabin, but they kept walking around it continuously. We were confused and couldn't figure out the situation. As the footsteps faded, we ran towards our campsite. As we were far away from the cabin, I turned around to look at it, and I saw someone standing at the door of the cabin with a mask on his face, and he was looking right at us. I screamed, and both of us immediately ran back to Katie's place. We called the authorities and told them what happened. Police searched the area and the cabin as well, but they found nothing. They didn't even find any chain or lock, and they said that the basement didn't have any mattresses or furniture. It was just empty. It was really strange to hear, as we were sure that we saw the locked door that led us to that creepy basement. And the person I saw, standing outside the cabin, looking at us, who was it? Nothing made sense, so we just tried to forget that day and never talked about it again. Me and my girlfriend of 7 years rented a beach house in 2018. My girlfriend's name is Stacy. The house was very secluded, and it literally sat right on the beach, like the back door led to the dunes. It was also more or less a completely private beach during the day, except for the occasional locals going for walks or jogs along the dunes. We were there for 3 days and 2 nights. During the daytime, for the most part, we lay in the sand with drinks, or we jumped in the pool in the backyard of the house. The first night, we went to some local bars to drink a little bit and went back to the house to relax and watch a movie. The second day there, like I said, we basically did the same thing as the first day, only this time we hopped in the pool first before going to lay on the beach to dry off. The house was absolutely gorgeous, a fantasy home for Stacy and me, surrounding the house pool in the backyard and beach 10 steps from the back door. It all seemed like it was going to be a fantastic weekend getaway. We stayed on the beach for many hours until around maybe like 4 or 5. Right as we started packing up and I stood up, I looked at the house at one of the windows specifically, and I thought for sure I could see someone standing at the window looking down at me. The sun was kind of creating a glare on the window at its current position, so I couldn't tell 100% if my eyes were playing tricks on me. I grabbed Stacy's shoulder and pointed up at the window. "Do you see that?" I asked. When she said, "See what?" I could see that whatever I thought I saw, it didn't seem to be there anymore. I told her to keep packing up while I ran back to the house and up the stairs to the bedroom window where I thought I saw someone or something. The room was empty though, as was the closet under the bed and the rest of the upstairs rooms. The only noise was the sound of the window air conditioners in various rooms and then the door opening downstairs. It was Stacy arriving with the stuff, so I chucked it up as seeing things after lying in the sun for hours. That night, we hit a couple of the same bars again. We stayed out later this night, because it would be our last night there. I think we got back around 11 o'clock. Upon entering the living room, we tried to flick the lights on, but they wouldn't. Then we noticed all the digital clocks from the cable boxes were off too, so the power was out. We looked around for a circuit box, but couldn't find one. It was way too late to call the homeowner. All that would happen is we miss out on watching a movie that night. We were tired anyway, so we just went upstairs, using our phones to provide us enough light to prevent us from falling on our faces. Up the stairs, we went to bed, and the alcohol in Stacy's system helped her knock out pretty quickly. But then, I sat up when I felt like I heard something from outside of the room. I looked at the doorway. Someone walked past the doorway in the hall. I covered my mouth with my hands to prevent my squeal of horror from being heard. I lifted myself over Stacy to get off the bed and run to lock the door. The second I locked it, there were knocks on the other side. Someone said, "It's the landlord. I came to fix the power." I didn't believe it for a second. The knocks turned to more aggressive bangs. The door started to shake as the man on the other side started twisting and shaking the doorknob. My girlfriend woke up and started to scream. She realized what was going on. I screamed, "Call the cops," to her, and I think this caused the man on the other side to stop. The next thing that happened after waiting in silence and fear with the sound of the police officers downstairs was that they had entered the house through the front door that was apparently left open. The police investigated, took a report, and said they'd let the local media know of the incident. They even helped us find the circuit box and restore power. The next day, we left first thing in the morning. On the ride home, I called the landlord, who said he hadn't even been near the Hamptons for a few weeks.